Journeys Ahead, Chapter 5, Highway to Knowledge. Exiting through the portal, both Void and Jida landed upon a stone-patterned ground that had been laced with red weeds. As the portal closed behind them, the two looked upwards, welcoming the new reality before themselves. Quietly, Void took in a breath and smiled, while Jida gawked in awe at what she had been seeing. The world they had emerged into looked like a mix between three things: the city of Paris, with both futuristic technology and medieval attributes. Skyscrapers had been designed with the layout of old castles, but were laced with technology beyond most understanding, casting off interesting shapes within the world's moonlight. Marching forward, Jida, now with Pofnu sitting on her shoulder, stopped at a black metal guardrail that separated her between a large riverstead that led through the city. A large, alien-looking Eiffel Tower stood tall in the distance, while the both robotic and King Arthur time buildings looked to almost shift and change, going over the roads and even passing the vehicles that drove by. Even small canoes and travel boats passed within the water below, revealing the residents of this universe. They appeared to be shapes, all with polygon-designed bodies ranging in different colors and fashion styles. These civilians then looked up at the musician with sets of confused gazes. The last thing Jida could truly take in at that moment was the main color of the city: neon reds and low blues. "Welcome to Yatir," Void introduced as he stood beside Jida and leaned over the guardrail, looking to the water below. It was then the two noticed that small sets of snowflakes had been coming down, not heavy, but rather gentle. As they fell, it created soft glimmers of red and blue to dance within their vision, and Jida couldn't help but hold her hands out and catch some. Whoa, I've never seen snow before. We learned about it in school, obviously, but Aurora was always more hot season round than cold. She explained, raising both her arms at her sides and letting the flakes melt upon her skin. Turning, Void couldn't help but smile as he watched Jida and Pofnu begin to laugh and swirl around in the breeze. She almost reminded him of himself when he was a lot younger, giving the spark a small sense of deja vu to wash over his soul. Grinning quietly, he welcomed it with open arms. "Alright, Freckles. Look, we gotta get to that tower in the distance. That's where all the information's held," Void explained as he pointed to the Eiffel Tower look-alike. "All the way over there? I don't think I can warp us that far," Jida remarked as she gazed out over the city, seeing the neon red structure glimmering in the far-off distance. "You won't need to. Just follow my lead," Void replied before turning and hurtling over the guardrail. "Well, Void!" Jida suddenly cried as she ran and looked out over the ledge, only to see that the spark was safe below. He was now standing upon a stationed canoe. "Come on, Freckles. This little boat will get us there quicker than you can say cesium salami 5 times over," the spark assured as he beckoned for Jida to hop down. Raising an eyebrow with a smirk, Jida took Pofnu within her arms and proceeded to leap forward, falling to the canoe below. Quickly, Void reached his arms out and caught the two of them with a subtle rock in the boat. "Ugh, gotcha," he yipped before gently setting them back upon their feet. "Thanks," Jida returned with a nod while Pofnu yelped in gratitude. "I've never been in a boat before. Do I row or?" the musician asked while taking a seat. "You just sit back and relax. I'll do the heavy lifting," Void replied as he pulled out his axe and used it to push them away from the docking point. The spark then began to use its build as a paddle, steering them and rowing in the right direction. Jida was a little confused by this, but they were moving all the same. All they could do now was just enjoy the ride. Rowing across the calm city stream, Void sat at the back of the canoe, while Jida and Pofnu rested at the front. The three of them in question decided to look around themselves in astonishment. For such a large city, there was little noise. It appeared gentle in nature, a stark contrast to Aurora for Jida, as well as most other worlds for Void. I'm a long way from home, Jida mumbled, petting the crystal blue fox. Do you wish to return? Void asked as they reached a calm current that could keep them moving ahead. Looking up with a confused eye, Jida shook her head in a declining manner before retorting with a quick, What? No. It's just, I've never left Aurora before. I've always wanted to travel, but this isn't how I had ever imagined it, you know? Reaching her hand down, Jida gently brushed it against the water's top, its liquid form glistening a maroon red in the city lights above. It was then she noticed small fish maneuvering below in small schools. They looked peaceful. They were creatures without a care in the world. Yet, it was also strange seeing such genuine wildlife in such a populated area, she thought. Very strange. On the other side of the boat, Void laid his axe upon his lap and looked to the skyscrapers that were passing by. He spoke no words, no vocal cries or a peep. While Jida was fascinated with everything around her, Void was truthfully mostly used to it all. He had visited many worlds and planes of existence. This constant travel had left an almost negative imprint upon Void, an imprint of losing a sense of awe in some aspects of life. Others would kill for his capabilities, to see other realms, other worlds. But in Void's mind, he'd see it more as a mistake to have than anything else. To lose that sense of wonder and curiosity was another factor as to why he didn't want anyone joining him. However, seeing Jida both curious and excited across from him, it made his heart feel almost colorful in some spots. The wonder in her eyes, the smiles. In a way, he felt as though to be that kid again, seeing all of this for the first time. Blue, you've been silent for a while. You alright? Jida suddenly asked, breaking Void's trance. Quietly turning, Void gave a humbled smirk before nodding. Yes, I'm alright, he said, leaning ever so slightly back. Okay, just making sure. Also, I have a riddle if you want to try it. Jaya then revealed, spiking Void's curiosity. A riddle? For me? Sure, Freckles. Let's hear it. Sitting upright, Void took his axe and began to paddle once more, steering them down the current in the correct direction, now making a beeline for the tower. Okay. Here it is. I'm tall when I'm young, but I'm short when I'm old. A candle. Void quickly interrupted, completely cutting Jida off before she could finish it. What? I didn't even... That's correct, the musician stated, leaving Void and Pofnu to softly chuckle. That wasn't fun. Have you heard that one before? Jida asked, crossing her arms. Craning his gaze at the guitarist, Void simply shrugged before answering. Listen, when you're alone for almost 10 years straight, you tend to find ways to keep yourself entertained. Riddles became a fun escape for me in dark times. I would read them for days on end. It wasn't much, but it helped greatly. It also opened my mind. Jida tilted her head to this, before quietly nodding. I see. She softly replied, before petting the fox once more. Hey, I've also been meaning to ask you about something. Jida then quietly blurted. What's up? The spark returned, gazing with his gentle eyes, while the water continued to carry them along. My powers. You said something about cosmic fire. Could you maybe elaborate on that? Jida asked, leaving Void to think, then nod and maneuver closer. Getting up from his seat, the spark carefully made his way to the bench that sat across from Jida's spot. Retracting his axe, he slowly sat, now being less than a foot away from his partner. The two locked eyes for a short moment, until Void began to explain. Cosmic fire, as the name implies, is a source of energy that comes from the cosmos itself. It exists in all realities in one way or another, a cross-dimensional constant, if you will. Void explained as he gently reached out and held Jida's right hand, proceeding to raise it into the light. It's both a powerful yet dangerous matter that can be handled in many ways. But for your case, I don't know how or why your body was able to withstand such an energy. Most who get as close as 20 feet would be disintegrated within moments. You, my friend, should consider yourself lucky. Looking at her own hand, Jida gently clutched it into a fist and bit her lip, letting the spark's words ring out within her mind. I wouldn't consider getting powers lucky. I make the most of it, but no. You should consider yourself lucky to be alive. Void interrupted, proceeding to place a hand upon Jida's shoulder. Listen, what you showed off back in Aurora, if it's true that you're still learning your abilities, then you've barely scratched the surface of the potential you could hold within. The fact that you still breathe and talk shows me that your soul is stronger than most. That's pretty rare. Now looking down at both her hands, Jida couldn't help but hear her heart beat within her ears. In an odd way, she felt chills crawl down her spine. If what Void was explaining was to be true, then she truly had a lot to learn. If that's the case, what kind of abilities would I have? Could I fly? Breathe fire? Warp between worlds even? Jida began to question and ramble, leaving Void to softly chuckle. Well, cosmic fire is a tricky thing to wield, especially when it's fused with your DNA. Void continued, now leaning back with a cross in his arms. I do not know the exact extent of what you can and cannot do, but over time, you will learn from not just yourself, but maybe through others as well. But there's something you should also know to coincide with this, Freckles. Leaning forward, Void's face dropped to a serious look. The color in his eyes almost seemed to fade, and that said a lot as they were mostly dark as is. To say Jida's skin ever so slightly began to crawl would have been an understatement. Listen, beings like us, those who have the choice to use our abilities for the safety of others, as we discussed earlier, we have a responsibility that is far greater than most. Void began in a low tone that Jida knew to take in full. The choice of which we use our gifts, our curses, whatever they may be to us, must always come from this. Raising his mechanical digit up, Void gently pointed to where Jida's heart was. But you must also think and rationalize what you will do with it. You must question and decide before you act in any situation. Void continued, now pointing to Jida's head, referring to her brain. You must also listen and focus on those around you. Innocent or not, you must stay on track to what your other two callings tell you. The spark then pointed towards Jida's eyes, and then where her ears should have been. Like I said earlier, listen to your heart, but when it's fully needed, listen to your whole self, your soul, and you will master yourself in any situation of conflict that may rise. Remember that when you try to master your abilities, because I myself had to learn that the hard way. Jida sat still for a long moment, an entirely long and still moment. Reaching up, she gently held her chest where her heart beat softly with a newfound sense of wisdom. She wasn't entirely sure on what to make of it, but she knew it to be important nevertheless. She then broke her silence and nodded with a smile. Void then returned the emotion before going back to his relaxed state. You know, many beings like you use their abilities for evil. I'm honestly grateful that you're sitting here and smiling rather than clawing at my throat. Remember to listen to yourself from here on out, okay? Maybe you'll even discover more about your powers. Void finished with a smile and a wink as the boat suddenly docked. But how will I know when that'll happen? Jida asked as the two of them slowly stood. Not sure. Sometimes you gotta just find those answers on your own. You never know when they may come to you. Void finished as the two turned and looked at the large tower monument that glimmered in neon red. Come on, let's not waste time. The spark said aloud as he got out of the boat with the now more open-minded Jida following behind. Lead the way, Captain, she replied, taking in a long breath. Approaching the tower, Jida couldn't help but feel a little underwhelmed to its structure. It looked much larger from a distance, but in actuality, it was just a little bit taller than your average transmission tower. Sure, it was big, but not skyscraper big. This tower, it's more like a beacon of knowledge. It holds stories upon stories across every dimension. The ancient people of this land constructed it, and only a select few, like myself, can access its files. It was built for those who can only master the multiverse. Void revealed as they passed by a few pedestrians going about their business. I see. And yet there's no knowledge of the glitched? Jida asked as they walked underneath its form, now being shrouded by the 4 large legs that held it up high. The glitches, at least I think, are a fairly new sort of threat. As far as I'm aware, they didn't exist back then. If they did, then surely my people would have had the insight to fight back. Void revealed as he stopped within the center, underneath the structure. Looking down, both the musician and the spark were greeted by many carvings within the concrete. Spiral shapes and runes all lined themselves along the pavement, showing strange mapways and the like. Definitely ancient, Jida rationalized. Alright, let's see what you have on multiversal constellation patterns, you old toot, Void said to himself as he knelt down upon one knee atop the runes. Looking on in curiosity, Jida watched as the spark gently placed the palm of his right hand down upon the carvings, while then proceeding to close his eyes. At that moment, the musician instantly knew that she had to keep her mouth shut. Something about what the spark was doing felt like it needed to be silent. And that's exactly what she would give. Slowly, Jida stepped a few feet back, holding Pofnu close and watching intently. For a few silent seconds, nothing seemed to happen. It was just Void kneeling alone without so much as a peep. Jida waited and waited, proceeding to rock back and forth between her tippy toes and heels, unsure of what to make of the sight. When finally, something happened. The runes and carving below started to glow. A crystal snow blue slowly illuminated to life around the multiversal traveler, reacting to what Jida could only assume to have been some sort of power he carried. To coincide with the runes sparking to life, the veins underneath Void's skin all ignited to life, swirling with several colors, all going back and forth to create a rainbow effect. Whoa. Jida gasped quietly as swirls of energy and ghostly symbols then arose from the runes. The tower around then began to flicker between red and blue, beginning a strange strobing light show for all to see. Surrounding the spark began a tiny funnel cloud of symbols, all in different languages and texts from all regions of the multiverse, religion, and cultural phenomenon. Text from Old Norse to Egyptian symbols spun at all angles, being accompanied by alien hieroglyphics that were native to Elseworlds. At this point, strangers within the world began to watch on, some scared and some amazed by the sudden surge of energy that Void had been emitting. Wow. Jeez. Oh wow. Jida mumbled as the snow began to dance within the spin of the runes, creating a miniature blizzard for all, until it then suddenly stopped. Opening his eyes, Void quickly reached into the spinning vortex, taking hold of something. Jida couldn't see what, but he had grabbed something, or absorbed it. She truly didn't know. Then, like nothing had even transpired, it was all suddenly gone. The phantom-like vortex, the glowing runes, all of it was gone, leaving flakes of snow to fall upon the ground. Got it! The spark exclaimed as he turned back around to Jida, rainbow hues now fading. You got it? Jida asked, reapproaching the spark. Lifting his arm up, Void activated a small hologram that presented a file to the light. It looked to have been pages upon pages of words that were slowly being translated into English. Got it. The spark repeated with a smile. Took a second to collect, but by the end of the hour, all the known information about multiversal constellations will be present to our disposal. I again can't thank you enough, Jida. Void thanked with a smile, a genuine smile that gave off a feeling of hope. And you originally declined to have me tagging along, Jida remarked as she crossed her arms and tilted her right hip to the side. The look within her eyes was one that had sarcasm with a hint of smugness to it. Don't get snippy yet. We still have a long road ahead. This is just one step forward. Who knows what may lie ahead? Void returned as he gently shoulder nudged the musician. I know, I'm just joking. But I'm glad to help. Jida replied with a smile, whilst Pofnu rested over her shoulders, looking almost like a scarf. Nodding, Void retracted the information back into his arm, and gestured for the two of them to make their way back to the canoe. I have about 2 portal charges left for a few hours. If you want, we can head back to HQ now, but if you wish, I know a good food joint in town. Void asked, placing both his hands into his pockets. Food joint? Well, look who's starting to come out of their shell. Jida remarked with a smirk. Void simply looked away with a contagious smile before merely shrugging. What can I say? I haven't felt this positive in a good while. Look, it'll be my treat this time. What'd you say? Spinning around, Jida began to gently walk backwards, her hands now clasped behind her back, while she moved in a swaying sort of walk. She was now looking at the spark with her bright white eyes that glimmered in the moonlight, locked intensely with his. I'd like that. She answered quietly, whilst ever so slightly blushing. Nodding in agreement, Void led the way towards the canoe, feeling both confident and happy within his steps. Sounds good to me, he said as both him and the musician walked side by side, nearly shoulder to shoulder. All felt good. Hope was high in the air, and it radiated a blooming sense of positivity. It was comforting, to say the least. That was, however, until the unexpected happened. Cracking through the air like a gunshot, there came a sound Void knew all too well. His hope and joy immediately faded as the noise slapped him in the back of the head, and he wasn't the only one who had heard it. Jida, as well as nearby pedestrians, all took wind of the sound. At that moment, everyone turned to see where it had come from. Underneath the tower, but above the ruins, there was a split in reality. A glitched portal. This one, however, was different. Unlike the others that would flicker between colors and hues, this one had a blood-red outline that guarded the static within. The spark wasn't sure if it had been just the tower's lighting, but it was threatening either way. Without hesitation, Void turned on his heels and sprinted towards the tear, his battle mask instantly deployed whilst he activated his portal sealer. Everyone, get back! He shouted as Jida, with Pofnu, followed close behind. As the spark rose his arms to seal the rift, the unexpected happened. From its form, pulsated out a large gust of energy, a cosmic flare of red dust that sent everyone within 30 feet of its presence to fall backwards and hit the ground. Grunting, both Void and Jida landed hard alongside the innocent bystanders that had no clue as to what was going on. It was then and there when they heard something. It was a noise that quickly caused a rush of confusion to creep its way across the crowd. From the portal, there came a voice. Stop them. It was a cold, raspy, and deep cadence, something that Void had never heard before. His sudden surge of bravery and commitment to seal the portal fell as though 2 words rang out in the air. He felt frozen in place, paralyzed by this voice. Normally, the glitch spoke, but not the portals. This was something else entirely. What was that? Jida asked as she stood beside the spark, the two of them fixated upon the portal. I don't know. Void replied just as something crossed through. From out of the crack came the form of a ghostly-looking glitch. It almost looked like the type of ghost costumes kids would wear on Halloween. It was draped in a saggy static form that had long clawed arms and eyeballs all over its body. A gross slushing and smudging type of noise came off its form as well, while it wriggled in the air. Taking notice and snapping out of his confused state, Void scowled beneath his mask, took aim, and fired. Several blue projectiles rocketed themselves through the air, aimed directly towards the glitch being, who teleported and phased out of the way in quick succession. When the blaster fire stopped, it turned and raised its right hand out towards the spark, almost looking to be saying halt. The monster then began to spark and pop before suddenly exploding itself apart. It was completely out of the blue, seemingly taking itself out alongside the portal, leaving nothing but fading static to disappear into the winter air. What the hell was that? Jida asked, looking on in utter shock. I don't know. Void replied, slowly lowering his blaster with a hint of worry in his voice. You don't know? Jida asked back in a state of worry. No, I've never... What the hell? Void was at a loss for words. He wasn't sure of what to make of it. He had never seen a glitch like that, nor had seen one implode upon itself. And the voice. He had no idea on what to make of it. No one did. Perhaps we should just get food later. Void sadly mumbled as he retracted his blaster and looked around himself. Is everyone alright? He then asked the civilians who didn't understand him. What was that? Jida asked as a metallic pop or creak echoed throughout the night. It then came again, louder this time. Again. Turning around, everyone looked to where they thought the noise had been coming from. It was the tower. The tower had suddenly begun to creak and rattle for some unknown reason. Slowly taking a step forward, Void approached the structure, worried that the explosion may have caused some kind of break in its metal build. Void? What is it? Jida asked as the spark began to scan the structure, seeing no signs of damage. I'm unsure. Nothing seems to be out of place. He replied, turning back around. Look, we need to do a full sweep of the area. I'm not entirely sure if our little spud is gone or not. Void then stated, walking back to Jida. You sure? He kind of blew up. Before another word was shared, there came an extremely loud noise and vibration within the ground. Before everyone's eyes, they watched as the front left leg of the tower suddenly came to life. Rolling their bodies, both Void and Jida watched the tower's leg rise from the pavement, dragging stone and rivets in its form. Then, with a mighty slam, crashed itself back upon the pavement, throwing up snow and dust. It then had begun to spark and glitch, while its interior suddenly filled with static. What the f-? Before Jida could finish cursing, the back right leg of the tower tore itself free, then the front right, and then the back left. The ends of each leg then suddenly self-tore and broke themselves apart, before they quickly reformed into a mishmash of metal rods and plates. These broken parts then slowly morphed to form the shape of two-fingered claws at the end of each leg, looking similar to how primates use their knuckles to stand upon the ground. After the unthinkable occurred within the tower's legs, it began to break itself apart at the base of its long spire neck. Like a snake, its tall frame split and contorted into a multi-jointed neck to the absolute horror of Void, Jida, Pofnu, and the civilians. Electrical currents and static then filled up the structure's hollowed-out gaps, creating a somewhat muscle-like interior for the beast. Then at the very top, at the base of the tower's tip, it suddenly exploded with 4 flower petal-like shapes. Within the center of this cursed flower, then sprouted the body of the glitched monster, the same one that had exploded itself a short few minutes ago. It was then Void realized that whatever this glitched creature was, it had possessed the tower, and was now controlling its form to act upon its will. As the mishmash of metal parts and glitches fused as one, this newly born behemoth of a beast adjusted to its form and heavily stopped, turning and craning its disgusting flower-like head to look upon Void, Jida, and Pofnu. The three of them stood in utter shock and disbelief of what they were seeing. Jida and Pofnu were horrified looking at the creature, while Void held his composure to the best of his abilities. Every other citizen in the area had already begun running and screaming as the beast roared ferociously down upon the three of them. Well, there's something you don't see every day, Void said aloud whilst deploying his arm blades. We're gonna fight it, aren't we? Jida gulped while summoning her cosmic energy. No, I'll handle this one. You and Pofnu get the civilians to safety. Void replied, readying himself for a fight. You sure? It's pretty big. Jida returned as the beast prepared itself to destroy the spark. "I've seen bigger." Void then shouted, beginning to sprint towards the Titan. "Really?" Jida shouted back as her body fully illuminated to life. "No! Are you kidding? It's massive!" Void suddenly screamed as the monster's head swung across the ground, taking Void with it and up into the air. "Void!" Jida cried in both fear and worry as the spark was whisked away into the air. She then quickly turned to the civilians that were scrambling for cover, all screaming and some even crying in fear. "Shoot! Come on, girl! Help me out here!" Jida asked Pofnu as the two began to act on what the spark had told them to do. Opening his eyes to a sudden impact, Void felt his body get ferociously slammed into the side of a nearby building. The Glitch's small body within the flower gripped the spark by the front strings of his jacket, whilst it continued to scrape him across the side of the medieval-looking structure. Void both winced and snarled as the feeling of stone and glass shattered across his back, denting and scratching his robotic build. This quickly led to the veins within the spark's head to ignite a rageful red. He wasn't just simply upset, he was pissed. As the wall to the building opened back out into the open air, the behemoth let go of the spark, sending him falling towards an alleyway. Grunting and ignoring his fear of heights, Void quickly extended and gripped his hands upon the sides of the two front wall corners that led their way into the alley. Before he could hit the ground, the spark let the momentum of the beast's throw act as leverage for what he did next. Like a rubber band, the spark's arms extended back, catching Void before he could hit the ground. Then, like a slingshot, the multiversal being shot himself back forward using his arms as the launching strands. Now flying back through the air, Void deployed both his energy blades and proceeded to spin like a helicopter's propellers. A swirl of blue was seen within the air then, and before the behemoth knew it, Void had sliced himself right through its lower abdomen, going in from one side and out the other. A cry of rage bellowed from the beast as it then began to stomp violently and sway its neck around, destroying the roads and buildings in the vicinity. Falling back downwards with a flip, Void extended his right arm out, quickly catching and taking hold of the monster's rapidly swinging neck. Pulling himself close, he raised his left arm back and rammed his energy blades into the mishmash of metal and glitchy flesh, trying to cut any nerves or weak points the beast may have had. Rearing its large right leg up, the monster attempted to claw at the spark, but like usual, he was always one step ahead. Retracting his blade, Void proceeded to dodge out of the way by both climbing and swinging across the beast's broken body, grunting and gasping all the while. "Ugh! Listen, big guy, destroying public property is a crime in most realities, but I don't think you taking possession of one is what I'd call cool or a sign of retribution. It's what I call just being an asshole!" Void yelled in a taunt as he swung himself upwards and landed atop the beast's flower-like head. Raising his right arm, he contorted it into his blaster, quickly beginning to open fire upon its head, trying to separate it from the rest of its body. However, the petals around its form quickly shielded the creature from the spark's onslaught, but Void wasn't about to give up. Rushing off the monster's neck, the spark quickly leapt himself up into the air, deploying his axe, and slammed it down upon the petals, launching its blade into their forms. Come on, open up wide. Whoa! Down on the streets below, Jida quickly warped civilians away from the falling rubble. She went back and forth in rapid succession as debris and metal crashed down from the fight above, while at the same time, Pofnu had been slamming herself in the pedestrians, just trying to knock them out of the way. Got you, and got you, the musician said each time as the last of the people in the immediate area were transported to safety. As she warped back to the scene, Jida craned her head upwards, seeing Void being flung from side to side, hanging onto his axe as the chaos continued from all around. "Jida, its legs!" the spark shouted. "What?" she shouted back, whilst now dodging out of the way from falling metal. "Melt its legs! I can't get a clear hit on it with it moving like this!" Void bellowed as he retracted his axe and fell back downwards, until swinging across the creature's body with his arms yet again. Breathing heavily, Jida looked at the beast's front left leg as it had been closer to her position. Furrowing her eyes, the musician quickly evaluated her circumstances and rushed forward, her hands now burned with fury as well as her hair. From the other side, Pofnu watched as Jida scowled in a frightening show of fury. "Okay, I hope you have a plan! She shouted before skidding to a stop, throwing her arms back, and then pushing forward with a mighty heave. From her hands erupted outwards a cloud of burning orange cosmic fire that quickly engulfed the creature's left leg. Once the flame hit, it instantly began to melt away, and the next thing they knew, the leg had completely snapped off from the rest of its gargantuan body. The creature instantly stumbled and screeched to this, whilst clawing and scraping at the spark that swung around its body. Great work! Now the others! Void cheered as he once again gripped upon the being and shot himself through the air like a slingshot. As he entered the air, Void's outline could be seen within the moon's glowing outline, being a dark silhouette with burning blue eyes. Before he dropped back down, Jida watched as he clasped both his hands together and dived downwards like an Olympic swimmer. From the roofs of his fists once again appeared his energy blades, but now Void's upper torso began to spin, getting faster and faster as he neared back upon the beast. It was then Jida realized that he was going to drill himself into the monster. With a sharp crack, the spark, spinning at high velocity, had sharply drilled himself into the back of the beast, loosening bolts and flesh, in turn creating leeway to a vulnerable spot upon its back right leg. Bursting out of the glitch's lower half, Void quickly spun and turned to face the loosened leg. In a quick form of action, he contorted both his hands into blasters and used them to launch forward, blue smoke trailing behind him. As he neared the leg, the spark reactivated his axe and made one clean cut right through the broken limb, severing it completely. The beast had now begun to stumble with its remaining two limbs. It thrashed and smashed upon the ground, breaking cement and throwing up snow and debris for all to see. Back below on the ground, Jida flipped and dodged out of the way as the titan stomped and crashed above her form. As she neared the leg, the musician mustered all of her remaining energy at once, and then bellowed a scream whilst unleashing another wave of cosmic fury. Just like before, the leg melted away within seconds, leading to the monster's downfall. As the beast came tumbling down, Void stood upon its head, feeling his gut drop and his anxiety rise as the world below grew larger and larger. "Off with thine head," as they once said. The spark shouted as he quickly opened one of his portals upon the ground, dragging himself as well as the creature's head within, avoiding collision. Inside the vortex, Void quickly opened another portal, the last one he could use until his system recharged, and brought himself and the beast's flower head back out upon the surface. The sight to be seen was something else entirely. The creature's back half stuck out and violently flailed upon the ground, while its neck was inside a portal, when its head was also sticking out the other side in a completely opposite place. Then, without wasting another second, Void looked away and closed both portals, leading to the swift and quick decapitation of the glitched. The cut came as clean as they came. The monster's writhing stopped, and the screeches ceased. Taking a deep breath, Void turned around as dust and snow hovered around his view, settling and collecting. "Jida!" he then called out. "Pofnu! Over here!" Jida shouted, her hair acting as a beacon of light. Upon seeing this, Void quickly made his way over, seeing the musician holding Pofnu close. Hey, are you okay? Are you hurt?" Void asked as he instantly began wiping dust and snow off Jida and Pofnu. "Yeah, we're okay. That was quite a fight you held. The hell was that thing?" Jida asked as the glitch's body slowly faded, leaving behind the remains of what was once the tower, now a mangled mess of parts. I don't know. I've never seen one like that before. Whatever that was, it can't be good. And I'm out of portals for a few hours," Void said, holding up his arm that had a low, flashing red light glimmering beneath his arm plate. "Void, you're bleeding," Jida quietly mentioned as she noticed a trickle of blue blood dripping above Void's right eye. "Am I?" he asked, reaching up and feeling the wound. "Ah, so I am." Sighing, Jida quickly used the backhand of her glove to wipe away the blood, before noticing more of the extent to Void's damage. "Dude, you're really scuffed up. You sure you're alright?" Jida asked, brushing the spark off. "I'm fine, but Somewhere the rest would... That'd be pretty nice right about now, if I'm being honest. Void remarked as he took in a slow breath. Don't worry, we'll find you something. Somewhere the rest. Jida replied, wrapping Void's arm around her shoulder to help him walk. It was then she turned to her left, only to see what appeared to have been a motorcycle that was tossed into the damage. You ride? Void asked as he caught wind of her sight. I had a permit on a car. It's close enough. Come on, let's get out of here. She replied as the sounds of the law made their presence known within the distance. Hey, slow down, Freckles! Void shouted as Jida quickly swerved the motorcycle around a semi-truck. Its horn blared while the hints of daylight crested over the horizon. Jida sat at the front, driving with her hands tied around the handlebars, while Pofnu chilled inside her tank top. The fox's head had been poking out, while her tongue had been blowing in the wind. Void, however, sat on the back seat of the bike. His mechanical arms were wrapped around Jida's waist as she awkwardly turned and swerved around traffic. Sorry, Blue. I'm a little rusty at this, she remarked as Void tirelessly rested his head upon her shoulder. Yeah, no kidding, he replied in a tired state. As the trio drove along, they continued to move around cars whilst driving along a city highway, looking for an exit. The three of them passed above and below bridges and moving buildings, all now being cast in a pinkish-orange sunlight that glinted over the veil from beyond. The snow that accompanied its gaze gave a very surreal feeling. One could dare say that love was in the air on this fine morning. A possessor. Void suddenly blurted. What? Jida asked, eyes focused upon the road. Possessor. That's what I'm going to call the type that just went kaiju on us. Okay. What do you make of that thing, by the way, now that you've had time to think? Jida asked as they passed by a small minivan. I'm not sure. It's been years since anything new came my way. It'll take a while before I find some rational explanation. But for now, let's just find some spot to rest. My back is killing me. Void finished while resting his chin upon Jida's shoulder, his eyes almost drooping to sleep. I second that one, Jida replied as they rounded a curve that led down a road slope. No. Both Jida and Void's eyes suddenly widened. The hell? The spark blurted, now fully awake. The voice. It was the voice again, shrill and stinging like a striking blade. No. No, 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 no. It repeated, echoing across the roadway. Void? Jida asked, slightly speeding up. I hear it too. Stay alert, he sharply replied, looking around himself with sweat pouring down his brow. No, no, no. You won't. You can't. You must learn. You cannot. You can't. The voice sounded like a grown man, pleading for some kind of mercy in an almost angered tone. You can't. You can't. Stop it, you damn Tsproart. You foolish musician. You damn pest. It continued, growing angrier and angrier. Stop them! Don't let them escape! As those last words exploded through the air, that familiar sound came once more, shattering glass, dimensional tears, and then the roars. From behind, quick eruptions of light glitched in the view as not one, not two, but three beings jumped the veil between their world and the real one. Both Void and Jida watched in disbelief through the bike's mirrors as three gorilla, they couldn't tell exactly what, but glitch-type beast crashed upon the busy street through the portals that instantly sealed behind themselves. Void then instantly recognized these types, but he had never seen three of them at once. These glitched were known as unstable glitches, and all three of them had begun galloping with their arms and legs across the road, making a beeline right for the two of them. Void? What the hell are those? Jida cried in horror as the beast began knocking vehicles aside and causing havoc within the street. Scowling in both rage and annoyance, Void activated his arm blasters, charging them up with his Nova energy. Alright, game plan. You drive, I'll shoot, was the only reply he gave, whilst turning himself around, sitting backwards upon the bike. Taking aim, Void began to open fire upon the approaching monstrosities. The three of them all snapped and bit at one another as they advanced in rapid succession. Void's plasma bullets struck their bodies. Muck and shards of static exploded off their builds then, causing the beasts to stumble and crash, yet instantly get back up with ease. Ugh, they just keep coming, Void shouted as he continued the fire. Jida, you gotta get us away from traffic. Innocent civilians are in real danger right now, Void yelled as he quickly discharged and reloaded his weapons. Hell, Jida gasped, trying to weave herself away from said traffic. Cars began to honk and swerve as the beast continued to approach and knock vehicles aside, throwing some over whilst destroying others entirely. Worst of all was that they were growing closer. Why the highway? Why of all places the damn highway? Void shouted as one of the beasts got right up on their tail. Acting fast, the Spark deployed one of his energy blades and slashed at the creature's face, causing it to yelp and roll back a few yards. Void? Loop-de-loops? Turning back forward, Void caught the sight of a swirling sector of the highway where gravity held vehicles in place as they went around in several spirals. Just stay focused on the road. That's normal for this dimension, Void assured before he suddenly stood upon the bike's back end. What the hell are you doing? Jida shrieked as they began to enter the strange gravity field of the loop-de-loop. To kick names and take ass, Void replied, deploying his battle mask, leaving Jida to shake her head in a confused manner. Then, with a hard leap, Void jumped from the bike towards the three glitches that had also entered this loop. The gravity field within this spiral was one that went in both directions, going up and down, connecting downwards, but pulling upwards, but staying center in the middle. It was what you would call a zero-gravity field. With a hard strike, Void activated both his arm cannons and eradicated the face of the glitch that he had slashed a few moments earlier. As the beast erupted in death, the surge of energy sent both the Spark and the remaining two monstrosities to be flung into the center gravity field. Looking upside down from the upper road, Jida and Pofnu watched as Void spun through the air, striking and kicking at both beasts that soared alongside him. With a hard kick, the Spark knocked one aside, whilst the other swung its claws, striking Void across the chest. A spray of blue blood and metal parts exploded from the Spark's side, causing him to yell out in agonizing pain. Void! Jida shrieked as they all went in the same direction. Void and the glitch beings soaring forward through the gravity field, while Jida continued the loop upon the road. Ignoring the pain to the best of his abilities, Void slashed away one of the glitches with his blade, knocking it back into the road below. The other glitch, however, was now approaching, extending its limbs like voids to swing across the spiraling roads towards the heavily bleeding Spark. Seeing this, Void scowled with a pained, angered gaze and looked for a way to fight back. Gazing upwards, he saw his escape, an oil tank connected to a truck's trailer. Thinking fast, Void extended his hands upwards and took hold of the large canister of gas. With two moves, he detached it from the trailer, and the second quickly brought it down hard upon the glitch's nearing head. As the static body collided with the fuel container, a sharp explosion of purple rang out, violently flinging Void near the front of the spiraling loop. However, before gravity could drag him downwards or upwards, Jida rounded the road above the Spark and grabbed him in the nick of time. As the road returned to its normal upright position, she promptly sat Void back down upon the back seat, where he just barely maintained strength. Void, oh my god! Jida cried, looking over her shoulder with worry, while Pofnu yipped in a panicked cry. We're not out of the woods yet, Freckles, Void stated in an exhausted breath as he looked behind himself, watching the last glitched beast emerge from the flames, galloping with an inhumanly large maw, whilst now on fire. Turning back forward, Void could see that they were about to re-enter another sector of the city. Just over another turn, they'd be leading the glitch into a more populated area. He then looked to the road and then to the bike, evaluating their options, until an idea suddenly sparked. Jida, give me control. Void didn't ask, he demanded. What? She asked as the Spark situated himself upon Jida's back. Proceeding to wrap his left arm around her waist, he then took hold of the right handle, placing his hand over hers. In that moment, Jida noticed that Void's grip was tight, Really tight, in fact. It instantly caused her mind to race. Void? What are you... Before she could finish, Jaida's face was suddenly shielded by Void's mask, for the spark had removed it from his face to hers. Reaching up, she felt the metal plate and looked through its blue visor, seeing text that she couldn't read. Void? She asked again as the spark accelerated the bike, going past 80 miles per hour. Look, what I'm about to do, it may be a little scary, Void shouted as the beast began to emerge upon their tail. Void, I'm not liking this, Jaida retorted as she noticed that Void wasn't making a turn. Rather, he was about to go off the road and over the ledge. In fright, she pressed herself against the spark's body, knowing all too well what he was about to do. Void, wait, I can't warp right now, Jaida shrieked as Void gripped her tightly. I know, you just gotta trust me on this, he shouted as the sounds of clamping jaws snapped from behind. The turn point came closer and closer, and with it came the guardrail that separated the vehicles from the long fall, and Void wasn't turning. Void! Jaida cried as they were now seconds away from what she believed to be certain death. Hang on, Freckles! Was the last thing Jaida could hear before closing her eyes and screaming. All round, sound ceased. No motorcycles, no roars or cries of agony. All Jaida felt was the gentle breeze. Opening her eyes, she found herself to be slowly descending. The highway above was now going upwards in a very tame manner. It was then she looked down, seeing that Void was still holding onto her, now with both arms wrapped tightly around her waist. Pofnu remained huddled within her shirt, but she couldn't help but wonder what was happening. Looking behind her shoulder, she saw it. It was Void. He was flying, or rather, gently descending. From his back were a set of large blue metallic wings that looked to have holographic feathers bristling within the wind. A thruster had been stationed in between these devices of flight that ignited out a blue flame. All Jaida could do was gasp and shake her head. You can fly? She asked aloud. The wings are a prototype, but once finalized, they should allow me that ability, yes. Void replied as they dropped to a calm, snowy terrain below. In an easy manner, Void slid to the snow, carrying both Jaida and Pofnu within his arms. Sliding upon his knees, the spark released a tired grunt before retracting his wings and sighing. Looking around, Jaida took in the sight of the tall highways above, as well as the now crashed motorcycle and mangled body of the glitch that was fading away into the light. Void had driven them off the ledge to protect not just themselves, but the city as a whole. I thought you hated heights, she asked, removing the spark's mask from her face. I do. But sometimes you gotta put fears aside for the greater good. Void answered with a weak smile until coughing out a wheezing grunt. Void, Jaida sighed whilst gently taking the spark's head within her hands. Void was a mess. He was dented, scratched, bruised, torn open, bleeding, and now slightly burned from the explosion. Even his hoodie had been torn up. Although he kept a straight face, Jaida could see that he was holding back tears of pain. She then did the only thing she could think of doing in that moment. Pulling the spark close, Jaida hugged him whilst warming up her body to try and help ease his wounds. Void instantly fell still to the sudden act of affection and care. The last time he had been embraced by another soul was the day he lost his parents. The last hug he had ever felt was from them before parting ways. With shaking hands, Void weakly reached up and hugged Jaida back, even letting small tears trickle down his cheeks. Are you okay? He asked as the waterworks came small and quietly. Yeah, I'm okay, she replied as the two rocked in each other's arms, both thinking about what had transpired within the last couple of hours. It shook them to their cores, left them silent and worried. What was going on, they both thought. Void, I think this world, it might be one where they're trying to conquer, fully, like yours and the others you've talked about. Jida stated, stuttering and trying to find a source as to why things went the way they did here. No. If that were the case, they would have left their portals open. Void returned as the two continued holding each other tight. Jida, they didn't come here to drain the world. This was different. I think they came here for me. Void theorized with a sense of fear in his voice. They know what we're doing. That voice, I've never heard it before, but somehow I recognize it. Void continued, making Jida's skin crawl. If that's the case, wouldn't that mean... Jida trailed off, leaving Void to finish it for her. That the hunter has become the hunted. With a shaken breath, Jida held Void tighter than ever before, letting her cosmic energy both engulf him and warm him, doing everything she could to comfort the one who had been dealing with her for the past day at most. She didn't know why, but deep down, even if it had been just a little over a day, her heart told her to stay close, or rather, her soul. Her connection with the spark was something she couldn't fully explain. Gratitude? Humbleness? She didn't know, but it was there nevertheless. Looking to her side, she could see the veins in Void's head, now glowing an amber orange, just like her cosmic fire. She wasn't sure on what to make of it, but she knew it to be something special, something that Void accepted in full. You know, you don't have to keep holding me if you shut up. Jida interrupted, sounding stern in her tired words. You've done enough today. Let me keep you warm. Rest. The cosmic being stated, leaving Void to fall silent, and then slowly let go in a sense. Closing his eyes, Void let the world of sleep take him over, while Jida continued to act as a beacon of light within the snow. Even when Void's arms fell limp in his slumber, she refused to let go, not until she knew he was both safe and ready to move again. And so, she stayed there, like a guardian angel for a long, long few hours. Don't worry, Blue. We'll figure this out. Were the last notable words Void could make out, as the restful darkness took hold of him. All the while, he felt a warmth that almost seemed to say it was going to be okay.